and welcome to another episode of Reptile Fight Club. It's me, Justin Julander, your host. And here with me is old Chuck. Say hello.
Boom shakalaka, back again.
Right on. It's just us today.
Just us today.
No guests this time, so we'll see.
I love guests, and don't get me wrong, but I was kind of glad to see it was just going to be me and the old doctor today. So
yep, it's been too long since
the pressure's off. Yep. One of us has to perform on a guest day. One of us. So now we can share the equally miserable load of performance. So
Yeah. Well, I got my ultrasound, so that's been kind of fun. I got it off of eBay, so it was used. It's a little bit older, but it's one of the nicer. Like, it was one that was recommended by one of the herp professors over at Utah State, and so I went over to her lab and she showed me how to use it. This brand Sonosite is the brand of ultrasound, and so she showed me how to use it, and I brought a few snakes over and we found their follicles, and couple that I was hoping would have some more developed follicles do not, so I had ordered it and it was supposed to arrive Friday, and I was having the training on Monday at the university, and then it didn't arrive. So I just brought the snakes to the work, and had her show me on my snakes. And then, I got a tour of the new lab. It's pretty sweet. They renovated the herp building and they put in all this nice stuff, but man, we went into the one of the rooms and it was pretty warm in there. I'm like,
yeah.
Oh, is this like a set temperature, or is this just for daytime? No, this is the temperature we keep them at. I'm like, wow. So they must be going by the heat the room approach rather than heat each cage.
But I mean, the room was like,
it was
mid-80s
warm. Like, it was probably mid-80s. It was hot in there. So
that's pretty warm.
Yeah. I mean, I think they brought back a bunch of snakes from Dale DiNardo, who did all that cool research with the children's pythons and the eggs and stuff. So, I mean, they know what they're doing, of course. But, it's just like, whoa, and if you're going to breed children's pythons, I don't think I'd be keeping them that hot right now. But
yeah, right. Right.
But then again, they live up in far north, the Northern Territory, and so they're probably not getting that cold during the winter. So
yeah,
I don't know. Depends on where they're from. So, but anyway, it was cool to see, and pretty state of the art and nice in there. They could control humidity and temperature and stuff in the room, so that was pretty cool. And it was nice to get to see it again. I haven't really been down in the herp rooms since Ben left. He was kind of my key into the biology department, into the herp.
So how is that? Like, I mean, as a professor there, you can't just kind of walk into any. No. They're like, hey, what are you doing here?
Yeah,
like, that sounds like my work. Jesus.
Yeah. Well, especially with the new facilities, like, everything's key carded, even the rooms inside the facility. And in our rodent, facilities and stuff, like, you have to have, like, your key card has to be approved to get into a certain room, and you may only have access to one or two rooms in a suite of 10 rooms. So probably similar to
that is like military. My work. Yeah, that's exactly like my work.
Exactly.
So yeah. If you don't belong there, you're not getting in.
Yeah. So it's kind of, I used to have some people I knew over there, some grad students and stuff when I was a grad student. So I'd go hang out and chat herps and stuff. And
so you gotta constantly keep the schmooze on for that, huh? Like, keep meeting grad students so that they don't graduate, and then you're left with no in. And then you're stuck doing the secret knock.
Yeah, there you go.
The door.
I did meet one of her grad students, and he was he's working on children's python reproduction and immunology, so it's nice. It should be pretty interesting to see what he finds. So I'm curious to see that. So that was fun. So I finally got it. I found out that the ultrasound was being sent to my old address because my eBay had my old address. I'm like, oh crap. And so I had it rerouted to be held at, one of the FedEx facilities. And so I went and picked it up yesterday.
Good save. So did it get delivered, or how did that?
Well, I think they attempted delivery, and I'm like, because my daughter was home, and she's like, yeah, nobody came, and I'm like, and they said we attempted delivery, and usually they leave the little card that says we weren't here or whatever. And so I'm like, so I got looking closer, and I saw that it was trying to be delivered to my old address. So I'm like, oh crap! So I had changed all my addresses in eBay, and then I had them reroute it, and they said show up with your ID showing that that's your address. And I'm like, oh no! So I looked on my ID, and luckily I hadn't changed my driver's license with my new address, which I think is probably technically illegal or something.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think you're supposed to do that within yeah. Well, you're the one who may have to renew your license in the next couple of years. So
there you go. And
do you have the real ID yet? Have you gone real ID?
I don't know. What's that?
Real ID is like
trust me, it's me. Look at me.
No,
it is me.
No. So you have to bring much more documentation. So you need like birth certificate, passport.
Oh wow.
Yeah, like you have to really. It's like proving you're a citizen basically, and they'll give you a real ID. So it's like a driver's license, but it's the real ID. So I think they keep pushing it back.
Use it as a driver's license?
Oh, well, yeah, it is your driver's license.
It's your driver's license.
But it's linked into the federal system, and your ID is verified. And if you want to travel on airlines, you have to have. And it's like it was going to be like May of 2022, and now I think they pushed it back to like maybe May of 23 or 24 because of COVID. They keep pushing it back, but yeah, eventually everyone will have to have this real ID to travel. You're not the Utes are not hip to this game apparently.
hasn't hit here yet, I guess.
No,
I just don't pay attention. I don't know. Maybe it has.
You're a driving man mostly. I will say you do fly though. You definitely do fly for work. So you probably don't want to sleep on old Chuck's advice here. I would look into this.
I probably will space it off as soon as we're done, and then.
How is the DMV in Utah? I have to imagine the DMVs in California are horrible, like horrible. And not that I think anywhere's DMV is good. And I know this is really random, but I was just thinking, like, maybe in Utah or maybe like Montana or like some of the more sparsely populated, maybe their DMVs are a little less.
Well, I went into the DMV the other day, but I wasn't actually supposed to be there. I was supposed to, we were registering a car. And I wasn't thinking, so I went to the DMV, like, hey, where do I register my car? And they're like, you're in the wrong building, so you idiot. So, but they were nice and friendly, and I'd love to help you, but you need to go to this place. So I had to go down the courthouse, of course. But
all right, already finding ways that
they were friendly.
DMV differs. Yeah,
hasn't been too bad, but yeah, there weren't very many people there either. But it was kind of in the morning, so.
I think the DMV may be the only place that has more jaded of state workers than the federal government does. But that's just my experience.
I mean, it seems like a pretty sweet gig. You just have to quiz people and tell them they get their license or not. I don't know. Maybe it's miserable in some way that we.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know if sweet gig would be the. I don't know if that's the words I would use, but it's not overly difficult. Yeah, I would agree there.
So I did finally pick it up.
So you have back to brass tacks.
I took it for a spin, and I identified a few females that look like they've got some either huge follicles or eggs. I think one of the womas had eggs. Like they were.
Did you ultrasound the blackhead?
No, I mean she's obvious. she's about to pop. She's not eating. She's giant. Yeah, she hasn't eaten for several months, and so yeah, she's definitely got eggs. So I'm trying to back. I think she's in her pre-lay shed right now. So
nice.
Yeah. A few others, like I think I've got a gravid female Perthensis pygmy python, so that's exciting. And then I didn't do any like lizards or anything, just the snakes. So, and then a couple others. Like I'm pretty sure my zebra jungle's about ready to go.
When again?
Too. Yeah,
nice.
She's gonna.
Is it zebra to zebra?
No, zebra to normal, like kind of
nice
striped lineage male. He was produced from. I think it was Flower, one of Ben's stripe projects, but he I got a striped animal from Ben and bred that male, and then he doesn't have any striping, but some of his babies in this last year's clutch are striped.
Striped.
One of the zebras is really crazy stripe. It's cool looking. So.
Yeah, it's that recessive stripe, right?
Yeah, and I was kind of surprised how quick I made it through all the females that I'm looking to breed or get eggs from. So it went pretty quick. So I think I'm going to be able to hopefully make a little project of it and track them maybe through the season and do like.
So now you're the ultrasound master.
I don't know if I'm a master. I had a hard time. I was trying to use the tub of water method instead of the gel, but I think I'm going to go with the gel. It was too hard, and they freak out when they hit the water, and they start trying to swim and move, and so that was a little, even though it was nice warm water, it was a little difficult to get them to hold still to be able to ultrasound them. And then the connection where the cord comes into the probe, it kind of came loose, and I'm like, is this going to get water in it and electrocute me if I'm sticking it in a tub of water? So I'm like, yeah, maybe I just want to use the gel. So I ordered some gel. We'll see if that works any better. But that's what they showed me, in the lab. Yeah. They trained me on using the gel, and it seemed to work a little better because, if they come out of the water, then you lose the signal.
Yeah.
But the instrument's kind of nice. Like when you see something, even if you lose it, you can hit the stop button or whatever, and then you can backtrack a little ways and go back to where you had the good.
So it kind of has a play,
yeah,
like a
log feature.
Yeah,
whatever, yeah,
that's cool.
So you have a certain amount of time that you could go back and look and.
So now I feel like now that you have spent the money for an ultrasound, you've kind of put the ball in your court to start really using that thing and making a lot of animals. I mean, maybe not a lot of animals, but consistently making animals, right?
I mean, I think I'm a few years off of that because I kind of need to get a feel for it and like kind of learn how to use it and track and figure out what sizes, I need to go back and read some of those papers because I'm pretty sure DiNardo's work kind of goes over that and talks about some of the papers, or at least follicle sizes, like along the course. But I don't know. I need to look into that more. I've got some in the green tree python book, but it's not like ingrained in my brain. So I need to go back and look that up and kind of figure out for the different species, what a pre-ovulation, post-ovulation size or, ovulation size follicle is. And then just kind of record. Maybe I'll pick like, okay, this year I'm going to do Aspidites, and I track Aspidites throughout the whole year and look at the ones who go on to reproduce and stuff, and we'll see. But it's, I think like after having messed with it, it's like, okay, this isn't that bad. I'll be able I should be able to use this. It's not a long setup. It's not heavy. It's not hard to move around, I got a nice bite right on my index finger from a Stimson's python. I thought she was good to go, but she turned around and grabbed me. She was like, feed. So yeah, that was my own dumb fault. But what do you do?
What you get for having finger sausages.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, they do taste pretty good, but so I've got a nice circular row of teeth marks there on my finger. I got bit the other day too, getting some out for something. Yeah, the fun of working in a snake room, right?
I was gonna say it is. It is.
That's why I don't.
It is part of the fare of admission. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, gotta be rough. Yeah. So, anything new with you?
No, not really, man. Just doing. It's been kind of cold here, so. I just checked on the diamond pythons. I hadn't seen them in, good couple days. So
how's that
get a little worried. Fine. They're fine.
Yeah.
They're hiding. I don't know. I couldn't find the male. If the females, hunkered down, but I'm sure the males.
What are your lows?
I mean, we're, probably, hold on. I'll tell, I might have to, I haven't logged on to the Govee app in a while. And so you gotta you gotta you gotta like let it update. But yeah,
I've had some frustration with that.
It does kind of suck in the sense that like, you know, it doesn't like, but you know, if you just take a minute, let everything download, and then it's all up to date. But yeah, like the last, let's see. Yeah, January 14th was the last time I updated, so it's been like, it's been a while. Yeah. But it gets pretty cold.
In January.
40s. We were down in the 40s. Okay. So, I mean, it gets down, you know, it's they're and so, you know, like what I was seeing was, you know, from the peak in the valley, from the high to the low is getting, you know, it's getting tighter where the extreme spread is way less. Let's see here. So yeah, so my min for well, does it make sense? Is this on the wrong day? Anyway, so my minimum for yesterday was 34.5 degrees. So that's the low. And then the high was up to 72.9 degrees Fahrenheit. So, you know, pretty... You know, and that's at the basking spot. So it's cold. It's cold. Yeah. They're out there freezing their ass off.
I could take some 40s or 30s right now.
I bet you could.
I woke up to single digits, man. It was not comfortable. Yeah.
Well, that's why I don't live where you live.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Why not as many people live here, I guess. Yeah. Well, cool. Right on.
Say hi, Ruby.
I thought today we could talk about.
Yeah, go ahead.
We could talk about peak call. We could talk about hydration and kind of like some of the ideas and maybe, you know, debate or behind some of these topics of hydration. So, so I'm trying to think of a way to kind of have two sides on this, because of course, who doesn't want to hydrate their reptiles? But
I like beef jerky reptiles. Yeah, I don't know. That's weird, right?
Dry. So I guess like, you know, maybe whether or not we should try to adapt more, I don't know if I'd call them experimental, but like different ideas have been floated, in the hobby. So we can discuss some of those and kind of whether or not, you know, they have merit in trying or following or doing that, you know what I mean? So maybe we'll have it be that way, where one of us takes the side of, that's kind of nonsense, and the other side says, no, there's merit. And
we're going to play this one fast and loose. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. Hey, that's our style, right?
Yes, we can do that.
It wouldn't be a Chuck and Justin episode without that. On, man. Fast and loose. We just decided on the topic a little while ago. So
sometimes you got to throw it against the wall, see what sticks.
Exactly.
That's what we're doing today.
Okay, well, let's flip a coin,
we'll see what sticks. Yeah.
Actually, let's do an ad. We have a new sponsor on the show, Mutton's Choice powerlifting gloves. So, you know, we appreciate the Mutton's Choice brand sponsoring the show. And if you wanna lift like a pro, get Mutton's Choice powerlifting gloves. All right, so back to the coin toss.
And if one wanted to get mutton lifting power gloves, where would they go?
I think you have to steal them from Nick Mutton's car. But,
I see.
Yeah. Okay. All right, here we go. Go ahead and call it.
I don't know. I don't know anymore. That's tails. Call it tails. I think I just lost the coin toss.
It's heads. You lost it. Oh, man.
I was just thinking.
I knew I'd throw you with the fake ad.
I was just thinking of all the reptile people trying to break into a teal blue or a baby blue Corvette to steal Nick Mutton powerlifting gloves.
It's a good thing he doesn't listen to the show, or I'd be in trouble. Anytime somebody breaks into his car, he's going to blame it on me. I'm going to pay for it. All right. Well, maybe I'll go with the some of these ideas have some merit. So,
all right.
And you can take the Grumpy old man.
So do you think, like, you remember back in the day? Because I mean, it's an older Corvette, right? So I'm like thinking, like, you remember back in the day, the Viper alarm. This car is protected by Viper. Like, do you think it's like this car is protected by mutton? Like, could you see? Like, wouldn't that be hilarious?
Hey,
you go to break to steal the gloves. Step away from the car. This car is protected by mutton. I don't know. Maybe I'm out there. Okay. Well, anyway, what am I doing now?
Okay, you've got the get off my lawn.
Get off my easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
What a stupid idea. No.
Who does that?
Yeah.
Who does that?
Okay, so I guess one of the things that kind of brought this topic to my attention was the debate around putting the pennies in the water bowl. Have you seen that?
The old thread? Cation exchange.
There you go. But maybe I should have taken the negative side, but because there's a few things on these that I have some. But anyway, I think I first saw that or heard about that from Harlan Wall. I don't know if he came up with that. Somebody told him that, right?
Yeah.
Pennies of a certain year before, like 1950 or something.
I think it has to do with the amount of copper. The amount of copper that they actually put into the penny.
Yeah.
I think copper.
I think this topic kind of was a hodgepodge of different things. And I thought it was like, so we'll talk about some of the other ideas, but we'll start out with the penny in the water bowl. So I'll let you lead out with your thoughts on the penny in the water bowl from the perspective of what a stupid idea that, no.
So refresh me, the penny in the water bowl. Let's establish this for
yeah. So the
I will
idea,
say our guest, but really for me, because I don't remember the whole fucking thing. But so
the idea was that it reduces bacterial growth because of the copper ions in the water, and so you have to use those older coins because they have the newer coins don't have enough copper or something. So I imagine you could use copper wire or something else that's coppery. I think that's kind of the idea behind using copper pipes. Why we have copper pipes in our home. So. Yeah. Does that sound familiar? I think somebody actually did a study where they took a bunch of water bowls and put pennies in some and no pennies in the other. And then they, streaked some agar plates or something, agar plates, and to see if they get bacterial growth. So,
and there was scientifically there was a clear winner here.
I don't think they ran statistics or did anything like that. So I don't know. It's hard to make conclusions from some of those, at home, experiments, but, they thought, it seems like I'm probably misquoting this, but it seemed like they thought they saw some difference or effect of the copper.
So, I guess, this is me kind of riffing a little bit. And so, my industry that I work in primarily is aerospace. And so we work with a lot of alloyed metals for the aerospace industry. So I'm pretty familiar with alloys. And a lot of the problem we have working on naval aircraft is salt water. So you have a lot of corrosion to alloyed metals due to salt water and some type of a wet, in an aqueous form. So you get a cation exchange in an aqueous form. It's called a galvanic corrosion cell, and generally it happens between an anode and a cathode. So the anode. Oh, I don't remember how this works. One is. It generally goes by how much a alloy or a metal wants to give up an ion in that cation exchange. And so some metals are on one side of the table, other metals are on the other side of the table. So I would think the way this works is that the mineral in the water serves as either the anode or the cathode, and then the penny serves the copper in the penny, because copper readily gives up an ion because it tends to be pretty soft. And a lot of this stuff has to go by hardness. So a lot of the softer metals tend to give up ions pretty easily. And so I would say that it really depends. Obviously, you know, the penny in the water. The water is the aqueous solution. You get two metals in an aqueous solution, and you're having cation exchange. Now, to me, it depends on how much mineral you have in your water. So there's that, and I think it definitely depends on what the alloying properties of the penny you're using are, which, you know, as you said, you kind of need it before a certain year because the penny is more brass or nickel or whatever they're using in pennies these days. I don't know. But it's one of those things where those conditions have to be met. And sure, I would agree that there's probably some ion exchange going on there. But I think long term, I don't think you're going to stop bacterial growth in water. I don't think you can sit there and just put a penny in water and fully stop bacterial growth.
Yeah, I mean, I think the basis of, you know, the ions from the copper will weaken the bacterial cell wall. They kind of I don't know if they like necessarily they just kind of mess with the integrity of the cell wall. And that's kind of what leads to different negative consequences for the bacteria. So yeah, it will slow growth. It will potentially kill off some bacteria.
Yeah, and I think if maybe you get bacterial clusters, so weakening the cell wall on that bacterial cluster that is closest to the exterior of the aqueous solution, right? But maybe not necessarily getting all of those bacteria depending upon how they cluster and form, right? So that's my point. Like, yes, it probably is going to help, but if you're saying like, well, I shouldn't regularly change my water because I put a penny in there and it's, you know, it's and the other thing is if you're changing your water so infrequently that you're using a penny, you know, or a stopgap method of retarding bacteria, maybe you're playing, you know, I mean, wouldn't the thing be to just clean and reintroduce a fresh water source that is, and you know, our water's fluoridated, you know, fluorinated. Okay, I like that. We'll go with that.
Fluoridated. Yeah, I think fluoridated probably is right.
So, you know, I mean, there's already, and the other thing is, you know, we're seeing water qualities decline across the nation. So, you know, maybe that's an argument for maybe, you know, maybe having that extra, maybe so. But, you know, if you have relatively good water quality from your municipal water treatment plants, you know, your water should be fairly clean and fairly bacteria free.
I don't know about you, but I've seen some of those, like going out herping, you see these pretty nasty water holes, you know, like, I don't think, and I think we're also coming from the attitude, I think a lot of keepers have the attitude that all bacteria is bad, you know, that any bacteria is bad bacteria, but most of our body is made up of bacteria. There's more bacteria in the human body than there are human cells. So we're more bacteria than human in some ways. And I mean, they perform a huge array of functions. I really got into this with the gut microflora. We were doing some studies and we were putting in a big program grant for a bunch of different related studies on how the microflora of the gut influences different things. Like for us, it was, you know, viral infection and treatment and things like that. And we did see some interesting things, and the gut, microflora are very important. And if you kill them, you know, so you take mega doses of antibiotics or something for, you know, like a MRSA infection or something, and then you kill all your gut microflora, it can change your metabolism. It can change all sorts of things, you know. Skinny people all of a sudden gain a lot of weight, or vice versa, you know. So it can really change a lot of aspects of your life. Even, I mean, so many different aspects of life, mental cognition, teeth, your cavities and strength of your teeth and stuff like that. So it's kind of crazy. Maybe your teeth cleanliness had to do with condition or something.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was just going to say is dental hygiene quality relating to cardiovascular fitness.
Yeah, I think, the idea that we need to have sterile water or ultra clean, ultra pure water is kind of, I don't think that necessarily applies. Now, take that with a grain of salt. You don't want a bunch of biofilms growing in your water either. And, like you're saying, those biofilms, the middle of them are completely protected. And so, the outer layer kind of gets killed, or maybe like the crust, but it also kind of protects the living stuff inside to multiply. And so, you can get pathogenic bacteria that can flourish in a water system, or if your environment's too humid or whatever. And so there needs to be a balance. But, I think if you're trying to, that you're not going to necessarily be changing your water out every day or every other day, and you want to stretch it to a week or two or something, maybe a penny in the water bowl would be a reasonable way to kind of keep that extreme bacterial growth down until you can go in and change the water bowl.
Yeah.
I use disposable. I mean, that has its own downsides of, adding plastic to the landfill and stuff. And sometimes I'll clean those out instead of chucking them and just put them back in the cage. But, if they get too nasty, or if they take a crap in their water bowl, it's a lot easier just to chuck that and put in a fresh new one, And, so I feel bad about putting more plastic in the environment, but at the same time, I keep my snakes a lot more clean that way. But, if you've got water bowls you need to clean out, maybe having a penny in there will reduce the opportunity of those bacteria to form biofilms. Maybe it will diminish that capacity to form biofilms. Now, the way to, I guess, test that, or to put it to a real scientific investigation, would be to have a known quantity of bacteria. So you could add the same amount to each bowl, and then put the penny in, half of them at random, and then see kind of what numbers you have down the road, and try to find some way to quantify, your reduction of bacteria, and show that that's significant compared to no penny in the water bowl. And I imagine you might see an effect, but like you said,
I just feel like, though, like, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you. I agree with you that you could sit there and you could quantify it, and maybe somebody who had the science wherewithal and the drive to do that goes and quantifies and says, yes, a penny in the water bowl, keeps the bacterial film away. And that's great. But what most people are going to hear is, well, if I just put a penny in my water bowl, I don't have to worry about it as much, and I'm just not going to change my water as often. So I think you're missing the point. Like, for me, it'd be like, well, in that case, then take your water bowl and put it, put it in your pot on the stove and boil it, boil all that film off, and then put your water back in there. 'Cause that's a far more effective strategy and less risk. If you're
have a copper water bowl. Just buy a bunch of copper water.
Exactly.
You're good to go. Right. Then you'll have no bacteria.
But what happens, also what happens when, you get kind of that because, all metals oxidize. And so that they get those oxidative layers on them. And those oxidative layers are a protective layer. So you're not doing the same amount of cation exchange with that oxidative layer there than you are with fresh, bare, open, metal. So, I think cleaning the penny, how often you need to clean the penny. Right. And so that's the other part, is most people see a penny and it's not a bright, shiny, fresh looking penny. That's because it's got that copper oxidation, or it's been oxidized. So it's not going to give up its ion as readily if it's oxidized already. So, a lot of nuance there in the whole, how well will the penny work for you? So I just, I think at the where the rubber hits the road with most people, it's probably not, is it scientifically a thing? Yeah, probably so. Is it a good idea? Could, like if you were like, I can't get water right now, and the water that's in the dish is what I have, and all I have are these old pennies, go for it until you're, but
I mean, will it hurt? Probably not. I mean,
probably
would
not.
It potentially help a little bit? It could, so I guess the risk of trying this, like you said, the main risk is that you get complacent with your water changes. So that,
I mean, I think that's
aspect.
my biggest underlying point is, nothing does the best for your water like taking your bowl, throwing the old shit out, scrubbing the fucking thing out, and filling it up with fresh water. That's really what's gonna, keep your water quality the best for, or treating your water, depending upon what type of animal you're using it for and what level of water. Because for different, I wouldn't take the same level of water quality for amphibians as I do for some reptiles, right? Like, so,
But I've seen a lot of swamps that the frogs come from too. So
that's fair. That's fair as well.
It's hard to, it's really.
But those are extremely biotically alive, and I would say that
there's a balance there.
There's a balance there, and
but we've also seen chytrid move through and decimate amphibian populations.
Yeah,
where
absolutely.
It's an imbalance.
Absolutely.
A foreign invader is brought to the waters, and it just takes over. So. And that's, we know the nightmare that's been. We just throw a bunch of pennies in the ponds and we'll be good. We'll kill all that chytrid.
Yeah, I've been watching, what is it? One of us? No, All of Us?
Oh, The Last of Us?
Last of Us. And
All in the Family?
No. So yeah, I've been like thinking chytrid fungus. No, I haven't really been thinking chytrid fungus, but it is a pretty interesting concept.
That's those other fungus that grow in the brain of the grasshopper, and it causes the grasshopper to climb to the top of the branch and hold on, and then it like releases its spores out to infect other What a crazy world we live in,
Right?
That's a thing,
Yeah, I think fungus are pretty amazing. They're pretty interesting, They're really a whole kingdom that we don't give enough credence to.
Yeah. And I guess maybe this goes to your side as well, but bacteria aren't the only things that can cause disease. Speaking of chytrid, is a fungus, serpentovirus or nidovirus are viruses, of course. And so, there's other risks that can be potentially transmitted through your water if you're not cleaning it regularly or if you're cohabitating or something. So, penny's not going to cure everything, but, it wouldn't hurt, and it may help a little bit. But as long as you're keeping your cleaning schedule and not thinking a penny is a magic bullet, that's going to solve all your problems. So
there is no magic penny.
There is no spoon. So that kind of brings up the next topic of hydration is water changes. How frequently should you be changing your water? So now the observation is that when I change my water bowls in my green tree python's cage, they usually come down and drink that same day. I hear that a lot, right? And so Keith McPeak kind of was talking about that on one of his posts about changing water, and maybe we change it every day. Why
He's
not?
been McPeaking on those animals, huh?
Yeah.
He's been McPeaking in on those animals.
He's McPeaking, and he's observing, and so I can
make observations.
Exactly. So, I guess our thoughts on daily water changes or more frequent water changes.
Yeah.
Do you want to lead us out, or you want me to take this?
So I think if I am the nay on this one, I think what you can see is, so obviously most snakes do not as a rule of practice, we offer water at all times under ideal conditions for our reptiles, right? Is that really a reasonable thing? No, I mean it is a reasonable thing, but do they need access to water at all times? No, they can go long periods of time without water. However, when you offer them fresh water, they will generally drink from it. And when you have water that is not as fresh, I think they disregard that water. I think they're able to tell the difference, smell the difference, whatever, between fresh water and water that has a biofilm or something in it. And I think that they definitely show a preference towards fresh, clean water, and they can tell what is fresh, clean water. So I think if you do more frequent changes, then you will always have fresh water available, which will ultimately logically lead to the most opportunity for hydration for them. However, I don't think that daily water changes are with a resource that is getting more finite for us, is changing the water for them every single day a necessary thing. I would say as long as you change it at least, once, maybe twice a week, you're fine. I don't think that water quality drops off that drastically. But that's me.
I've got some. I love Keith's. I love his posts. I mean, he's
I agree.
Mind, and so I think there's definitely something to that idea. Those frequent water changes. I guess it depends on the species, of course. I mean. We're kind of comparing apples to oranges to kumquats or whatever. But, like some species wouldn't know what to do. They would drown in a water bowl.
Yeah.
They don't know what to do with it, and they're not going to be able to really use it, and they could damage them and kill them. So, of course you need to know the natural history of the species you're working with. If you're working with, say, a Boelen's python where it rains every day, and they're probably, getting most of their water close to where they're hanging out most of the time and drinking from a puddle from the rain or something like that, or collecting it in their coils, So, I guess, in that case, maybe a daily water change or even kind of administering water. And this may be the next topic we can talk about, but, spraying your animals or administering the water a different way. For example, knobtail geckos. I don't keep water bowls in my knobtail gecko enclosures, but I spray them down a few times a week, spray down the sides of the cage and spray them down if they're out there, and they'll drink water droplets, off their body. A lot of reptiles have kind of that, cool, channeling system that they can wick up the water and it gets to their mouth and they can drink just by standing in a puddle like a, Moloch or thorny devil. If you haven't seen that, it's very cool. Check it out. Go look at that on YouTube or something. But
my day geckos wipe it right off their eyes.
Yeah. So have you ever seen a day gecko drink from a?
No. I've never seen them. Yeah. I really haven't seen them go. I keep water in there next to their food dish, but most of the time when I see them drink, it's when I miss the cages.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that next, I think. But so as far as changing the water, I think it could definitely have a benefit for some species. Say, these
I agree.
That come from a very wet environment, like like the highlands of New Guinea or the lowlands of New Guinea for that matter. And, other maybe species that live or spend a lot of time in their water, they probably could, benefit from either a running water system or a replenishment of their water, because a lot of these species may be in rivers or river systems and maybe, okay with, or benefit from that frequent water replenishing and changing. And so, again, it depends on the species. Like I remember, watching the Hammersliensis monitors, the southern Pilbara rocks, Pilbara, Aussies, go down, the rock faces and come down to the little stream and drink and things. So, I think even in the harsh desert of, Western Australia, they still have access or know where to find that water and running water even down in those gorges in the Pilbara. So, and there's kind of a concentration of wildlife in those areas where you have that permanent source of running water. So, I thought about that. If I ever keep Pilbara rock monitors, how cool would it be to have a big cage with a giant rock wall and a little stream running along the base of it, Yeah. And I guess the differences of captivity, we say, okay, animals in the wild probably don't drink every day, but they probably have a place where they go has 100% humidity, like a burrow or something. So they're not losing water like they would in the captive environment where we're not providing them a humid hide because we're like, oh, they're a desert reptile. They come from the desert. So therefore they don't need any humidity. Whereas they don't need 100% humidity their whole time, but they do need it when they're in their hide area or what. So,
and I think
lots of extenuating factors.
The hydraulic gradient of what's going on in their environment makes a big difference to how much water they're giving up or how much they can retain in their body as to how much they need access to at the time. And, out in nature, sometimes the access to water and the hydraulic gradient are not friends with each other. So they have to be able to go periods of time without water. Now, in captivity, is that necessary for them to do? No, it's not. But, nonetheless, just like you can go period of time without water or, that they can as well. Does that mean you should? No, it doesn't. But does that mean that you need to offer them water every single day and it needs to be the freshest water all the time? Probably not. Does that mean that you can go a week without changing water? No, that's probably not okay. Right. Yeah. So, I think I guess what I'm trying to say is it's very situational, both in nature and probably in captivity. But, if you can give them access to clean water on a regular basis, probably changing more frequently, depending upon the species, especially, makes sense.
Yeah. I had a friend that I was helping him clean out some cages. He'd been gone for a couple days, and he went and started cleaning the cages, and there weren't any water bowls in the cages. I'm like, oh, what's going on here? He's like, oh yeah, they don't need to drink every day. And I was going to be out of town, and a spilled water bowl in a like a rack system with all these smaller snakes is much worse than the no water for a couple days and giving him water. So that's why I'm giving him water now and hydrating him back up and stuff. So, I think again, depending on the way your animals are set up and the natural history of the animal you're working with.
Well, and like if you had to go off an AZA checklist, that would be the hugest no-no ever.
Yeah.
But again, you have to know it's situationally specific and the context and the natural history matter, right? So, by no means am I saying, "Oh, water's not. Don't worry about that."
No,
not a big fucking thing, no, that's not what I'm saying. So,
and like you said, I think zookeepers kind of pull their hair out when they're
for sure.
The boards kind of demand that each cage have fresh water every day in it, and it's like, well, they don't drink from a water bowl, so
I've heard Steve. I hear Steve say this on the regular, so it's there's a frustration within the zookeeping community over AZA standards as well. So as there should be in some cases.
And I think anytime there's a rule that has no natural history to back
just
it, or,
capricious and arbitrary.
Which is, it's on one hand, it's easy to regulate. You can go in and say, is there water in the cage? Check. Yes. Check. No. So I imagine it's more to make their job easier than having to know every animal and their hydration requirements. So that's tricky. But you think that some of us. Yeah. So I guess that's where we maybe have a benefit there as private keepers, is we can make that choice and
have a little bit of freedom of movement. Yeah,
exactly.
Definitely.
So I guess, a lot of this comes back to this is know your animals, know their natural history, know what they need and how to provide that best for them.
Yeah.
Good thinking, Well, good topic. Thanks, Keith. Let's go to, spraying and fogging and,
fogging.
Yeah.
No, not flogging.
Reptiles.
No flogging.
No flogging your reptiles.
Yes.
And I really, I gotta, of course, bring up Ron St. Pierre.
I knew it. I
know that's coming, right?
Yep, of course.
Sorry for the repetition on that.
Yes, as justly deserved, but yes, I knew that was coming.
And I don't know how it didn't hit me, sooner, because I've spent many nights out in the desert sleeping, and you wake up and there's like a layer of water on you sometimes, not all the time. And when he's talking about collecting reptiles and there's nothing moving, and then all of a sudden the dew point hits and there's a layer of water over everything, and all of a sudden everything comes out and starts licking up the dew. And so, like a lot of times when you spray an animal, they freak out and they don't like it. But I imagine fogging is a little less of a shock to them, and, probably has the same purpose if the fogger's on long enough. It kind of mimics that dew point setting. So I think, definitely, especially for, arboreal animals and those animals that don't necessarily regularly drink from standing water, having those kind of, incorporating that type of misting or fogging or spraying into your, maintenance regimen is very important, and I would say almost critical, to have that animal act like it needs to act and be like it needs to be. So, you hear that a lot about green tree python babies don't drink, and they freak out when you spray them. Well, maybe you miss them, or maybe, your humidity is 100%, so they don't need to drink as much, or they, collect the dropping water or something. If you're spraying at the side, it freaks them out. But if water's dripping on them from above, it's okay. Those kind of things.
Yeah, and I definitely think when you just blast a snake with a spray bottle of water, they're like, hey, what the hell? Same way you would be is if I turned a fire hose on you. That's quite a volume of water. And generally when rain starts, it not always, but it doesn't usually just drop as like, a fire hose. It kind of comes down a little bit at a time. And so,
sometimes.
Yeah, that's right. So, maybe it is not that they dislike the water. It's just the volume of delivery is not preferred. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So, I think, so as somebody who keeps a lot of plants and stuff in all of my terrariums with all of my geckos, it's, having plants in there and having a misting system, and, you're watering those plants, you're misting those plants as well as the animal, and you're also providing water for evapotranspiration for the plants, which is also kind of keeping the humidity up as the plants evapotranspirate. So it's, and you don't have to necessarily spike you can spike the humidity, by the misting, but then, the plants as they transpire, kind of keep that humidity up. So there's definitely, I think there's something to be said for misting and incorporating a more natural setup into that. You get some extra benefits, I think, of just kind of a little more regulatory cushion in your caging, where you're still getting some of the benefits, but maybe not having to, you don't have to constantly be misting, and the plants are kind of helping you as well, and it makes for a more biotic environment. And so I definitely think I think, gosh, misting can be such a fine line though as well, because if you over mist, and especially if you're using like a substrate that that can mold or, like I have to watch it with my aspen shavings. Well, yeah. If I overspray my aspen shavings, they tend to get little mold on them after a while. Mm-hmm. So I really have to watch how I mist, and I really have to stay after my substrates so that they just don't. And cause I do spray the Tracy eye fairly regularly, especially now, especially this time of year. Mm-hmm. I've started doing it more regularly just because I've kind of noticed them, kind of cohabitate more, in the days after I spike their humidity. Mm-hmm. So I think, I think there's, biological benefits in reproduction and signaling and things like that for misting for reptiles, which is definitely good. But I also think you have to watch very carefully, because not all misting is good misting. And you can even saturate soils with over misting and actually have fairly low humidity, but fairly,
messed up,
fairly abiotic soils. Yeah. So too much is not always good. So, and the how you're misting, the how you're aerosolizing. So like you talked about a fogger, which is probably the finest aerosolization of moisture, versus, what most people do in a spray bottle. Those are very, very different things going into an enclosure. And they can have a gross effect on the volume of water in the enclosure and the amount of bacterial growth you'll get in the enclosure, depending upon frequency and volume. So
yeah, I mean, waking up in the desert with that dew, that collected in the night, dried up pretty quickly as soon as the sun hit, and we just lay out our sleeping bags or tarps or whatever, and they'd be dry in a couple minutes. So as soon as that sun hits. So yeah, I mean, you got to keep all that stuff balanced. And again, I mean, this is a push to get out in the environment where the reptiles live. Where the species. I listened to Alan Rapace on Project Herpetoculture.
Alan Rapace went on Project Herpetoculture. You got to step your game up, Justin.
I know,
you got to step your game up.
He said they annoyed him enough that he came on. But here's what he did say, that he needs to get on and kind of battle with Ron. So if we can get Alan and Ron
we're
on,
done. That's it. All right.
Then we can just quit and be.
The challenge has been laid.
So, and I'm like, man, that sounds like a reptile fight club, not a Project Herpetoculture. Come on, guys, don't be stealing our.
All right, Ron St. Pierre, if you're listening to this, I know it's your off season, but hopefully you hear this.
I was going to message each of them separately and say, hey, Ron just challenged you.
Yeah.
Hey, Alan just challenged you. You want to come on?
Man,
he told me
Alan's
he wouldn't
talking
come
shit
on.
about you, Ron.
You're too much
exactly.
of a wimp.
So, get in their ear. Let's make this happen. You're Don King right now, Justin.
We'll do it, and then they'll hear this episode, or Ron will hear this episode and be like, "Hey, we've been played." So yeah, we need to get those guys on. That'd be cool.
For sure.
But, what was the point? Oh yeah, Alan was bashing Phil for never having gone over to see the Uromastyx in the wild. Like he keeps all these species. Like, hey, weren't you the one that went over and watched them in their environment? Oh wait, no, that was a better keeper. Something to that extent. It was pretty good. Yeah, that was a really good show. It was good to hear. Alan's a bright guy for sure.
Yeah, Alan is very legit.
Yeah. So but that idea of you need to know where they're living, what kind of environment, what the conditions are, and if you're sleeping out in the environment, you get to feel what it is all night long, or kind of see that. We got to experience that up looking for the montane rattlesnakes up in the mountains of southern Arizona, and it was pretty cold, and there was a dew, over us when we woke up, and it was a little uncomfortable there.
It was not. Yeah, it was fairly. I mean, was pretty wet. Like it was,
If I ever keep a clobber in the future, I know kind of, what to maybe give them some nights,
Yeah, so, no doubt.
But yeah, getting into the environment, knowing kind of where they are and when they come out, when they're active, when they're hiding, where they're hiding, all those kind of things really help. And I think, too, like things like day geckos, very small reptiles kind of have an advantage because you can give them more of a, like a planetarium. If you try to give a python a planetarium,
they'll just
you have to
tear
have
it up.
A very large one, with a lot of plants so they can.
You have to do your planting. You have to do your planting very correctly. There's a lot. Yeah. There's way more work that goes into something like that than.
And in a confined space, I mean, they're gonna curl up here for a little while and then curl up here, and so they're gonna smash down all the plants in that area, and then they're gonna, over after a week, everything's smashed down and ruined, and all your work to.
So I have the problem where I have to go back and actually trim back all my plants because they're literally, I had one of my vining plants push through the top of the screen and was growing out. So I do well with my planting.
Yeah.
Like almost too awesome. Well, where you're like, oh my gosh, this is,
Is that outdoors or indoors?
Oh, it's indoors.
Indoors, that's cool.
Indoors, yeah.
You need to put on a master class or something. Teach me how to do this stuff.
Oh, easy money, dude. Yeah, I make my own soils and plant it out, and just man, it's those Jungle Dawn LEDs. Those things are.
That's the thing that does it.
Yeah, they're solid. They're super solid. Yep.
Nice.
Miss King and
you're good to go.
It's all Arcadia. I just run Arcadia lights and Miss King and.
Oh man, I made the mistake of listening to the Chameleon podcast. What's that? Chameleon podcast. Now I'm going to space off the name because I'm trying to think of it. The Chameleon Keeper podcast, the Chameleon Academy podcast.
Gotcha.
With Bill Strand.
Yeah.
He went to Madagascar and he comes back talking about, the stuff he experienced. And I'm like, oh man.
It's
and then
cool,
seeing Kaufman's videos and stuff, man,
I saw that they were going to have, like all those guys, Strand and Frank Payne and there's a bunch of guys who are going to do it.
Big panel. That was a memory, wasn't it?
Was it?
It was like 5 years ago or something. Frank Payne
was
on a panel. I don't know.
Jesus, I just outed myself about how much I pay attention.
Oh, I listened to somebody else that was a chameleon keeper too. It was on the Animals at Home network. It was Dylan.
Dylan DeMuth.
He interviewed Jonathan Hill of Perdalis, or the Panther chameleon guy, and so I looked at his website and I'm like, oh man, chameleons are so cool.
They're cool.
Yeah,
they're pretty cool.
So, but I can't think like that because there's no way I could handle chameleons right now. Anyway, so back to I guess depending on what you're keeping and how you're keeping them and all those kind of things, those, just be aware of the natural history and try to get out and see what kind of, their environment, what it's like.
Yeah.
And, obviously if you go during a week or a couple weeks even, you're there at a snapshot, you're there at part of the season. So that doesn't mean you can just kind of say, okay, now I know everything. So, go back at different times of the year or look at some temperature data or something, see if there, look at the, the rainfall and things like that.
Well, and I think that's the kind of the downside to a Miss King is because it's very set and forget. And I mean, our summers to our winters, although they're not as extreme as your summers to winters, but I mean, it's enough that I probably should change how my hydrologic regimes are a little bit in those cages to mimic more of a natural cycle for those animals. So
most tropical environments have that dry and wet season, and
absolutely. And then I mean, even I keep standing eye as well as Grandis, and one is northern ranging and the other is southern ranging, and they have very different environments, as far as how much heat and water they get. So, here's pretty much the same animal that, inhabits very kind of I wouldn't say very different climates, but enough that they're distinctly different.
Sure. And, and I mean, they probably do fine, kind of kept at a single regimen and, but would they benefit
Is that ideal?
from
Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
a more naturalistic cycle?
Exactly.
Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah.
But, I think that if you can, I don't know, I remember watching, I think it was the Viper Keeper
Viper Keeper.
Kind of an interesting guy on YouTube. But I don't know that I'd necessarily mimic what he does, but he would water all of his vipers with like a squeeze bottle.
Yeah.
And so he'd go down and so that was his way of interacting with the animals, was to water them. And so he's interacting with them, daily or every other day or something.
I would say some of those tropical vipers, that's maybe how you do it. You know what I mean? Like, I mean,
well, this was the desert ones too. Like he was, giving them drinks, like his sand vipers and stuff, So it was kind of cool because then they see him as the bringer of water, but I mean, you're getting pretty close.
Way to deity yourself there, man. Way to deity yourself. I am the bringer of rain.
Well, I mean, that's kind of how you form a bond with your reptiles, is they see you as the one who brings the food or, that kind of thing. And,
I guess the food monkey and the rain god are the same person. Yeah, you're right.
That's true.
You're right. You're right.
So, I don't know. Do we cover it? Any other?
Are we calling reptile keepers polytheistic keepers? Are we?
I guess you can choose if you believe in the monkey, the food monkey, or the water deity. So you can take your pick.
Nice.
Any other topics on hydration? Cleanliness. I mean, we talked a little bit about should you use RO
we kind
water?
of covered.
I
will talk about RO. I will talk about RO.
I just want to get this little funny anecdote. There was the Fiji water, they had some commercial where they're like, because it's not water from Detroit or something, and the city of Detroit, you're right. The city of Detroit, kind of got offended, of course, and they said they tested their water quality next to in
Fiji
competition
water
with Fiji, and they had better water quality than Fiji water did. So
I think people have an unrealistic expectation of exactly how much they actually filter a lot of this. Well, they have an unrealistic expectation of where this bottled water comes from the source, and then how much filtration the companies actively spend money to do, because doing large scale reverse osmosis is extremely expensive. And if you don't believe me, ask a desalinization plant, right? Mm-hmm. That's pretty much what you're doing with, obviously it's way more intensive to desalinate and RO,
much bigger process than
but it's the same principle, and it's expensive to do. I mean, even if you have RO systems in your home, those filters are not cheap, and they do, if you're going through a lot of water, you need to stay on top of those filter changes.
I mean, we have secondary water, and we also have, so I always use, for watering my reptiles, I always use the water from the house, and we have a water softener and things, because the water in Utah is terribly hard.
Yeah, you're all mineral, you're all rock, so it's it's going to be, it's going to be.
Yep. But there is, I mean, you do need some of those minerals in your water.
And that's what I was going to say, is
you're probably going to suffer to some extent.
That's the big issue with RO, is that is probably the biggest the biggest detractor from people misting with RO. So people like RO because it doesn't stain the glass as much when the water, when the water evaporates, it just leaves the mineral, and it leaves that mineral deposit, and it kind of stains your glass. Mm-hmm. And so people like to use RO, but RO, if you have a really good RO system, it almost totally demineralizes the water. And so if that's what the animal's primarily drinking, you can get mineral deficient, animals, because they're not getting enough mineral out of the water. And I can tell you in California, you can, disclosure, I have a native California yard, right? And so I water those plants, with a hose sometimes when it's really hot, or kind of in the between the seasons. And okay, they do fine, but nothing looks as good as when it rains in California. No California natives look any better than the first rain. And that's because all that mineral, all that micronutrient is coming out of the sky and going to the plant. And they just, it's so important for plants. It's so important for animals. So I do think while there is some advantage to RO, you really have to be kind of careful to not, overdo it. So you can get systems that do not completely take your water down to, slightly before distill. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like, and 100%, you don't want to use anything like distilled water where all of the mineral 100% has been stripped out of that water through distillation. So, yeah, I mean, understanding water and what's going on there when you're misting or even giving drinking water to an animal is a huge part of keeping your animal healthy. And I think, not knowing what you're doing, you can really kind of screw the pooch in some ways.
Yeah. I again, like, listening to, this is why we need these symposium, people to come and talk about water systems and reptiles. That would be really a useful thing. And I think we think we've got all the information we need from the internet or, those kind of things. Listening to Alan talk about the process he went through to get different feeder insects and, like the black soldier fly larva and stuff like that. And hearing about, kind of that jockeying for position by the different, bug breeders and, using black soldier fly larva as a feeder source and all the regulations and complications that come along with that. It was really an interesting thing, so I'm glad he got that to work, and to have that grub pie, man. Some of my lizards just love that stuff. Yeah. And so, being able to share that information and that was kind of the idea behind Herpeton, and that was such a fantastic thing. And both, I guess, Roy was there. I don't think Phil was there, but Roy went to Herpeton, and I feel bad. I don't remember meeting him. I may have met him, but he was there, so I could have met him. But there were a lot of and the idea was to get everybody together to talk, and so they were talking about Herpeton too. And Alan basically turned it over to Roy and Phil, and we're gonna have it out on Alan's land in Ocotillo, and just sit around the campfire and talk reptiles. But I do think there is some
that will be cool. That will be so cool.
But I still think. I still think we need, PowerPoint presentations with like data and some different ideas there.
But a windy fire night with Trevor and the boys, like, come on.
Exactly.
It's done. Like, I'm there. Sign me the fuck up.
So I agree. I think that needs to happen. So we'll have to keep prodding Phil. Yeah. I mean, the baton has been passed, boys.
If Phil and Roy want to meet Trevor, they better get on this shit, because we don't bring Trevor out for nobody. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And even, even if it's a smaller scale thing, or, we just get a bunch of us together and just chat, ideas and stuff. And really that's what the herp trips have been. You get together and you discuss different ideas and chat about things. But I think I liked Herpeton because all the presentations were recorded and put onto YouTube. That was really pretty cool, so we have access, not all of them, but a lot of them. So I'll go back and rewatch Alan's talk on, Egernia or whatever. I really wish he would have had more time on that one. He kind of got his time stolen and didn't get to see some of the presentations because some of the talks went over long and they need a, some kind of electrode or cattle prod to get those people off the stage if they go over, because I don't want to miss out on.
I think how Justin feels about people hogging time.
Now I'm on a committee for the one of the virology societies, and so I was on the program committee, and I know what it means when somebody goes over their time and cuts into somebody else's or cuts into the breaks or the lunch where people get upset. So not a cool thing. So. stay to your time, people. Come on.
Yeah. Make sure you got to feed your professors, or they're going to get pissed.
Exactly.
They're not dealing with that late lunch crap.
Yeah. So they also cut off kind of my riffing at the start because they switched my talk with somebody. Somebody wasn't there, so they're like, "Hey, can you go now?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I guess so." And then they said, "Can you talk for longer?" Yeah, I'll try. So I was just kind of trying to riff a bit while they got the talk up, but telling some stories about Alan and Jeff and Jeff and Alan Rapace was pretty fun. But anyway,
cracking some jokes.
Yep. So I don't know. I think this is we need more symposia. We need more groups. We need more herp trips. Get people together and discuss ideas and get those ideas, test them, get them out there. Share them. That's kind of the scene where you get to share ideas and discuss different thoughts and how they apply to our captive animals. So
nice,
cool. Well,
yeah,
that's hydration. I think we hit some good topics here. It was fun to chat about that. So, any cool stuff you've been listening to, or interesting new facts you've heard lately about reptiles that we can discuss?
Boy, I feel like it really let you down in this segment of the show.
Is it time for another ad?
Yeah, I think we need cue Welch's the mutton sponsor.
Welch's fruit juice.
Exactly. Thank you.
They're our original sponsor, and they've just kept this show going. Fuel Chuck's appetite.
God knows I have
Welch's fruit juice. All right. Well, I again, just really enjoyed that, listening to Alan on Project Herpticulture. So I recommend that one. Another one that kind of hit closer to home was, on the Herp Highlights podcast, those two English blokes that, they do a good show. Their episode titled Iguanas with a Sweet Tooth. They talked about, so this professor, Dr. French, Susanna French at Utah State, she was the one that taught me how to use the ultrasound. This was one of her papers. She's studying iguanas and specifically like the rock iguanas on these islands where a lot of tourists come through, and the tourists will put grapes on sticks and feed it to the iguanas or throw it to them in the sand. So the iguanas are eating a ton of grapes, which are full of sugar and, not the natural diet of the iguanas. But of course they love them and they're going to come running for them, and they see the tourists as an opportunity to get their sugar fix or whatever.
Yeah.
And so she's looking at these iguanas and how this is impacting them. And, in the lab, she's not using rock iguanas, unfortunately, so I don't get to go see a bunch of rock iguanas over on campus, but she has green iguanas as a surrogate model. And so they're doing studies looking at, the high sugar diets and the impact on their systems. And it seems like they're finding very similar things to diabetes. So they've got these diabetic lizards. Although, interestingly, like the reviewers of the papers won't allow them to call it diabetes. Like they're kind of, there's a lot of pullback on that. And she's like, it's the exact same symptoms and
just be like, it's not diabetes, it's diabetes.
Diabetes. So
diabetes.
Get old Wilford out there.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, it was a good listen.
You don't want to use the D word.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. But
you and America both. You and America both.
We need to get Suzanne on here and get her.
That'd be
I
cool.
think she'd be willing to come on. She'd be a good guest. She's pretty energetic and fun. She came from Dale DiNardo's. She did her postdoc there or graduate work. I think so. Yeah. Can't remember what she said, either graduate work or postdoc in DiNardo's lab. So that's kind of cool. What else? The Snakes and Sound, that paper that was just released, that's kind of making the waves through the reptile world of, that snakes can maybe hear sounds more than we think. I don't know. I haven't looked at the paper. I think it was Zach Loafman. It was Lucas is never going to live that one down.
Never.
Never. But
oh
Zach,
my God.
Zach said he looked at the paper and he's not quite sure if they proved anything. He's like, I don't know that they really showed that. But it was in a pretty high-profile paper or journal, I think. So I don't know. I'll have to take a look at that. So I probably shouldn't bring it up if I haven't read it yet. So
it didn't impress the Sack. Doesn't impress me.
I guess not. Yeah, we'll just let Zach do all the work.
That's right.
But anyway, that's I think that's all I had. So. Anything else? We're calling it an episode.
I'm sorry, I'm not much help today.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I was going to try to give you some clues, like snake sound, because I think somebody brought that up in the chat, but Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll be back with you next week to bring you more nonsense from Reptile Fight Club.
Now that's some high quality H2O. Fight Club.